Nell'attesa, diciamo, di...
We are waiting for the names of our panelists. And while we're waiting for this list to be projected, please have a look at the publications that have been distributed. There are a number of brochures provided by the speakers. They are very interesting for the topic we're talking about. We're going to talk about this afternoon.
Allora, facciamo così.
So I'd suggest that we leave our technicians to look for the list. In the meantime, I'd suggest we can start without these names to be immediately projected. So, good afternoon, everyone. This is the second meeting organized by Concord within the 40th edition of the Rimini meeting. First of all, we would like to thank the organizers of the Rimini meeting. In particular, we would like to thank our colleagues from AFSI who asked Concord Italia to participate in this meeting. Today, we're going to talk about strategies for education to global citizenship. We're going to take stock of the situation. We would like to resume what was said yesterday during the first panel organized by Concord Italia. And we would like to start from two tangible issues. There are two issues that have emerged during the meeting in other sessions. So compared to global challenges, compared to international cooperation and humanitarian aid, vis-à-vis the sustainable development objectives and the objectives of the Agenda 2030, in other words, the objectives that we are called upon to reach in about 10 years' time, we as individuals citizens, and as people who work and live, what can we do? From this point of view, we have set ourselves the goal to provide tangible examples of how European, local, and national institutions promote these moments in which ideas are shared and promoted. And another issue that was posed yesterday was the following: what kind of measures can be adopted at a community level? We are all members of a family, of a community, so how can we feel this corresponding dimension, and how can we act? When one talks about education to global citizenship, people normally look at you. They normally answer, well, yes, we all believe that education is fundamental. We also believe the same. No doubt about that. The only thing is that education to global citizenship has three main priorities, and these priorities refer to the three words that make up the whole phrase. First of all, education and international cooperation. That's the context, basically. Then the second word is citizenship and citizenship-related policies, and of course, globalization and the global dimension. So who are the panel members of this session? We have with us the director of the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation, Luca Maestripieri. He's sitting next to me. He will serve as a trade union with the panel that was held yesterday. Then we also have David Flynn, task manager of the General Directorate DEVCO of the European Union. He deals in particular with gender equality, human rights, and democratic governance. Then we also have La Salete Coelho. She comes from Portugal. She comes from the Escola Superior de Educação de Viana de Castelo. She is the president of the Center of African Studies of the University of Oporto. We also have among us Alessandra Filippi. She's Councillor for the Environment and Mobility of the city of Modena. We also have Ilaria Signoriello. She is an expert in social economy and social inclusion, and she is part of the Comunità di Capodarco, and Arianna Valentini as well. She will bring us the example of Operazione Colomba on the ground. Operazione Colomba is a part of the community of Papa Giovanni XXIII. So we have all levels represented here, and this is actually the style of what we wanted to promote for global citizenship. So I'd like to give you some initial food for thought. A recent publication by the Hub Center for Strategic Studies that is currently investigating relations among peoples is telling us that the new emerging relations between peoples are taking the shape of popular sovereignism. This morning we had David Sassoli with us, the President of the European Parliament. He mentioned this topic on a number of occasions, and the scholars that released this publication are telling us that relations between peoples are becoming increasingly competitive rather than cooperative. So they talk about adversary transnationalism. In other words, something that places us in some kind of competition with the others and not in cooperation. So this basically supports the idea that probably being alone is better, and that maybe Europe, if you adopt this point of view, that Europe might be more counterproductive rather than only productive. So we thought about giving some figures in this respect. The study reports that between 1970 and the financial crisis of 2008, the European production has grown by 4 times. It has grown fourfold. In the so-called developing countries, millions of people have gone out of poverty. And they are a new middle class. They make up a new middle class, especially in some countries like China, India, America, Latin America as a subcontinent, and South Africa. In 1970, 35 countries in the world were electoral democracies. And today, in 2005, the electoral democracies were already 142 countries. So this tangibly shows that some improvements have been made. So the people who have adopted the stance of the so-called popular sovereignism, they are against the so-called real democracy. They go against the fact that there are several components, that you have the civil society, a legislative power, the executive power, and all of them communicate to build projects together, to do co-education together, and to implement projects together. What they hope for is the so-called direct democracy. And this direct democracy would be the prelude to, in a way, giving power to the people, to core. And the people is seen as an indistinct mass without the mediation of institutions, as if there were a direct passage from the top to the bottom. UNESCO has recently dealt with this topic, and a very interesting article was published. The title was Education to Global Citizenship and the Rise of Nationalisms. That was the title. And UNESCO basically states that what has recently taken place, is not so much the rise of the phenomenon per se, but rather the rise and the increase in the media visibility of this phenomenon. There are positive forms of nationalism. For example, this led to the birth of the nation states in the 1900s. But the problem is a kind of nationalism that doesn't care about minorities. So what is taking place now is only the fact that this phenomenon is becoming more and more visible. So education to global citizenship tries to counter this problem by putting forward some prospects. Within the Agenda 2030, we have objective number 4, and under point 7, global citizenship is an important point to reach to develop these objectives. And it proposes, therefore, a vision. This vision might be viewed as, for example, learning how to coexist with people, having fears in this respect, and also having rights and limitations at the same time. In other words, as if you could return a vision, but at the same time also a practice. This is actually what we could do every day, what we could experiment every day. And the Agenda 2030 clearly states that the basic idea should be that no one is left behind. As we said yesterday, much is being shared. There is no longer a vision for which you have northern countries having to care for southern countries. So you have cross-cutting problems and cross-cutting solutions and visions. Another thing that education to global citizenship does is that it starts from local contexts, and that's already a response to the need for global responses. So this kind of education looks at the way in which communities cooperate, but then ultimately you have to do something more tangible, very tangible. Yesterday we talked about the Fridays for Future. So even if in the very last resort, in the very last hamlet and villages, if I have the chance to work in these places with young children and have them understand the issue of the ecological footprint and actually the number of planets that their ecological footprint would affect with their daily habits, of course, this can bring about change in their lives. Many of our youngsters today pay attention not to throw plastics away. They bring their flasks from home. They don't buy so much plastics from home. And this is already a tangible sign of what's changing. Nobody of our children would probably think about the fact that you throw everything in just one bin, but they already do separate waste collection. And then the education for global citizenship promotes civic and political engagement. It promotes differences. We no longer talk about civic education at school, but actually we as citizens, we have to wonder about these issues. We are aware of these problems in a critical way, in an intelligent way, and also in an emotional way. We cannot only think with our brain. There are feelings involved. We are involved as bodies, as human beings, as places as well. So we are focusing on policies that have to go hand in hand with this kind of vision. Because if you don't have some kind of a plan, you won't reach any objective. Then doubts, critical thinking, wondering the reason for certain aspects. I remember that when I was discussing with young children, and those were the very first years of Romanian immigration in Italy, we made a number of examples, or children would make examples at school, and then after conversation there was a young girl about 13 years old, and in the end she said, well, I think the same as at the beginning of my speech. And so my reply to her was, why? And she actually replied, why should I ask myself why? So this is exactly what education to global citizenship should do. You have to induce people to ask themselves why. Education to global citizenship does exactly this. You do not provide golden recipes, but you sort of kind of induce people to do critical thinking. You do not have a single identification. Everybody should use his or her own identity, brain, and body. And education to global citizenship also foresees So education to global citizenship also foresees competencies on digital competencies, on digital citizenship, sorry, because it is very discouraging to be felt set aside. And the issue of digital competencies, digital skills is very important. It's a very important issue. Either you are in or you are out, and you might have people feeling excluded from these skills. This is just to say that education to global citizenship in Italy has its own strategy, and the strategy was adopted by the National Council for Cooperation to Development in February 2018. There's one last passage, final passage, that we're waiting for. However, this kind of education is already widespread, and so the document that refers to it is widely used. So I would kindly invite you to download the document. It is available from the site of the Agency for Development Cooperation, as well as in many other institutional sites, and it deals with a number of topics, and that is why we have our speakers today. It deals with the economy, with work, enterprises, research, context localization and related policies, the environment, international cooperation. All of these issues are foreseen with national and local action plans, and these action plans have to be drafted by the citizens. So we are here today to start wondering about this, to make these things tangible. And having said this, I would like to leave the floor to the director, Luca Maestripieri, for his remarks. Thank you very much. I think the introduction has already been very far-reaching and thorough to understand how complex this topic is. Very frankly, the first time I addressed the issue of education to global citizenship, it was not immediately clear to me what we wanted to convey with this phrase. Education to global citizenship is a very, thorough and complex phrase. And behind this concept, there's many more. It means educating people to a natural awareness that we all have, but we have to develop it in order for everybody to be citizens of the world with equal rights, equally entitled citizens of the world. Our agency, the Agency for Development Cooperation, carries out activities of development cooperation. In other words, we bring our actions through projects and through initiatives in neighboring countries, like the partner countries, to help them and help ourselves as well to progress towards the achievement of these common objectives set by Agenda 2030. To do this, we need, and this also in Italy, a conducive environment, an environment supporting us, an environment that helps us develop the necessary sensitivities that we need to bring the sustainable development objectives forward. That is why it's so important to educate people. Education is one of the fundamental objectives of the Agenda 2030. This has already been said, and these days I've had the chance to participate in a number of sessions on these issues, and during the sessions it has increasingly emerged that if we want development cooperation to be effective and efficient, then one of the fundamental issues is education and training. Quality education. This is what makes people, all the people scattered throughout the world, to get the necessary skills to then be able to progress and be actual citizens of the world with rights, opportunities, with possibilities, with the possibility of doing in their communities, and to have the right of living a free and dignified life. So this is one of the main objectives, of the paramount objectives of education and training. And this objective can be reached through activities carried out on the field, as well as through activities that we all have to carry out within our communities, starting from the family or the municipality, for example, or starting from all the organizations whose task is to, in a way, create this kind of common ground to the achievement of these goals. The national strategy has been the result of activities put in place by the new law on development cooperation, and that was the result of the cooperation between various people. These people represent public institutions, they are sometimes members of the civil society, representatives of local governments, and they all provided a reference framework. And it's important and useful to start from that reference framework to then develop the actions that each and any one of us as an institution can guarantee. In particular, our agency has long destined part of its resources, has long allocated part of its resources specifically to these topics to promote initiatives that are in a way brought forward by bodies or associations or organizations whose aim is to in a way focus on the topics of global citizenship. There are public calls for tenders with resources, ad hoc resources for this. And in doing this, we are fully committed. That is because we believe that we as citizens of our country, citizens of Europe and citizens of the world have, each and any one of us has the right to make reference to a reference context in which the dignity of the human being ranks first of our action, is the first important element of our action.
Il direttore Maestripieri.
We would like to thank Director Maestripieri, and now we would like to ask David Flynn to explain how the European Union, and particularly the European Commission, is supporting this process. What are the main challenges to be tackled, and what kind of strategy has been put into place? Thank you.
Paola. Hello, everyone. Today I'd like to start with telling you about a program called the DEAR. DEAR is an acronym. It's DEAR, Development Education and Awareness Raising. It's one of the EU's, or it is the EU's Global Citizenship Education Program. It's a program that's been here for a long time, 43 years actually, right now. And the purpose of the DEAR program, like all GCE programs, is to develop EU citizens' awareness and critical understanding of the interdependent world, and also the roles and responsibilities in this globalized world. We want to inform our citizens of the global development issues, the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs, and everything that's underneath it. But it also provides a great opportunity to also reaffirm the fundamental values of the EU. These are the values that unite us all. All our member states have signed up to, and we've all signed up to defend them and defend them. I hesitate actually when I say the EU fundamental values, because I don't think that they are exclusive just to the EU. I see these as almost world values, or universal values, if you will. So, how does the DEAR work? How does this program work? Actions or projects under the DEAR are implemented almost exclusively by civil society organizations and also local authorities organizations. And I'm happy to say that right next to me here we have one of the local authorities that is the beneficiary of a DEAR project. The EU recognizes the vital role and importance of civil society, and we cannot attain or achieve the Sustainable Development Goals without engaging and enabling civil society as well as local authorities. So we operate by having a call for proposals. So since 2005 we've had 9. We set the wider kind of guidelines on what we want to achieve with them. and we invite civil society organizations and local authorities to make proposals on what they would like to do related to the SDGs. Now, we take this pan-European approach, what we call it, where we ask the proposals to have partnerships with other CSOs across Europe and other local authorities across Europe to all work together to achieve their specific goal under one of the SDGs. We did that consciously because we believe that's where our particular niche or added value is. And we didn't want to do a direct duplication of some of the GCE programs that we have in our member states. Now, I say that member states have their own GCE programs, but unfortunately not all member states do. And even the member states that do have them, the funding towards it is maybe not sufficient, and this is a problem that we need to address. So I'll give you a concrete example with my program that I work on. In our recent calls, we've always had a dedicated lot for the EU 13 countries. These are the new European countries that joined in 2004, who historically have a weaker civil society. So we reserved a certain amount of our budget towards global citizen education, specifically to them, to help strengthen them, to bring them up to the level as some of the other member states. I want to take this moment right now to talk about the Eurobarometer. So the Eurobarometer kind of makes assessments on how European citizens feel on many, many issues. So they asked the question, how many or what's the percentage of EU citizens who believe in development cooperation? The answer was 89%. Fantastic, huh? Very encouraging. I'm happy. However, next question was, how many citizens feel that they themselves, as an individual, can contribute or do a positive effect or contribute positively to the SDGs or to the major development issues? Only 50%. Next question after that was, how many are currently acting to do something to face the SDGs, to address the SDGs? It's about 25. So we've gone from 89 who believe in development cooperation down to 50% who believe that they think they can do something, they themselves, and then only about 25% who are doing something. I think this is fascinating. I think this highlights a big, big issue. We believe in it. We're not so sure whether we can do something about it, and then we don't know how. And that's exactly what the DEAR program is about. That's exactly what global citizen education is about. We want to inform our citizens so they know, they understand, and then they know how to act and do something about it. And I obviously believe that civil society organizations and local authorities are best placed to help us achieve this. They have the experience, they have the knowledge, they've historically always been there. They fill the gaps and deliver the services when governments cannot. And they are also the closest to the citizens. However, in order that civil society can attain this, we need to face this challenge that we have today, and that is this shrinking space for civil society. It's a global phenomenon, and it's getting worse. It's not only in our conflict countries or low-income countries, but it's present in our middle and high-income countries. Across all continents and including in Europe. And I believe, as an EU citizen, but also as a global citizen, that we need to be leaders and we need to fight against this negative trend and defend these values. Long-term sustainable development will never be achieved without ensuring and maintaining openness and the autonomy of the civic space and upholding these rights of freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, freedom of assembly. We need to create an enabling environment for civil society. It is fundamental. I was going to talk also about some of the causes of this shrinking space. They're extremely diverse, and in the interest of time, I won't go into detail, but the overall general cause of it is this authoritarian pushback against democracy. So, what is the EU doing to respond to this? I believe the EU is a leader in this. We've recognized it for a long time, and we have a lot of ongoing initiatives and actions to address this. We tackle the shrinking space issue via our policies, our instruments, and our political dialogue. I would say nearly all of our instruments and programs engage with civil society and fund them or dialogue with them or leverage them. I'll just highlight one in particular I think is a fantastic, a flagship one, is the EIDHR, the European Instrument for Human Rights, for Democracy and Human Rights, and has many components within it that support civil society. Just to mention a few, the Emergency Fund for Human Rights Defenders, who are on the front line defending the civic space. We also have this thing called the Crisis Facility, which allows quick emergency funds to go to human rights defenders or other CSOs to help them in the countries or in the regions or places that need it the most. And also, of course, our call for proposals, like under the DEAR. We also do CSO roadmaps. Proud to say that we have them already in over 105 countries, and these are helping our partner countries strengthen the civic space and help create this enabling environment. And then finally, our framework partnership agreements. These are political as well as financial, they have a political as well as a financial element, and they represent kind of this commitment to a long-term stable partnership with these actors. And we have one, for example, with Concord International. But just because we're doing a lot doesn't mean that the job is done. We too can do much more. We know that we can improve. We need to dialogue more. We need to continue having more formal and informal dialogue with civil society. Under the DEAR, we have something called the multi-stakeholder group, where we've met under before. But I think a fair criticism of ourselves is maybe we don't do it enough, and we need to upgrade this. We need to do it more systematically. Okay, last point. Another key actor in this, and one that's been this cross-cutting kind of topic that's been going across this whole week, are youth. We've heard about the 1.3 billion. We've heard about the aging continents and the young continents. We all know the huge potential, energy, and value that the youths have. Our European Consensus for Development specifically states youth as powerful agents of change, and this is very true. So the EU recognizes their importance, and we need to prioritize our actions towards them. Similarly to civil society, if we do not help our youths and create a conducive and enabling environment for them, we will not reach the sustainable goals. We need to address both simultaneously. However, meetings like this, where I sit up with other young panelists and I look amongst other youths, this gives me hope. The road is long, the challenges are huge, but together, with cooperation, we can achieve it. Thank you.
Bene,
Well, we would like to thank David for his contribution, and we now move on to La Salete to ask her a practical example of a country that is applying this strategy. Good afternoon. I would like to thank for the invitation. I'm happy to be here to talk about the history of this strategy in Portugal. I will speak Italian, which is obviously not my mother tongue. So, sorry if I'm not 100% clear. Anyway, I'm here to tell you a story, the story of a good example of the Portuguese strategy. So this is, what is the national contest? I can't move on with the slides, sorry. I'm asking the technicians. Doesn't work, apparently.
Sì, io parlo. Allora, sì, la storia dell'educazione.
The history of education to development in Portugal is quite recent. Up to 1974, we had a dictatorship, so to speak, in Portugal. There was no cooperation. So this is a recent story. In 1985, the NGO platform was created, so our history is quite recent. In 2002, there was the first European, the first time that Portugal participated in a European Congress in Maastricht on global education, and that actually reinforced what Portugal was doing in this sphere. Then in 2005, our cooperation agency recognized the importance of development education in an official document and allocated funds for NGOs with a call that is still going on with funds for NGOs projects. Then in 2006, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs understood that this is something extremely important. So maybe it was the Ministry of Education. And it is important to involve the ministry as well, because this is something that has to be done also at a public level in Portugal and elsewhere. In 2008 and 2009, we started to write down, to draft the national strategy, and there was the involvement of different actors in Portugal, 14 actors of national platforms. So, governmental institutions, public institutions, as well as organization of the civil society. And this turned this strategy into something more than a political document that could be forgotten and left in a drawer. So, this strategy was something that felt owned by different actors. So there are different sectors and themes: environment, education, citizenship, migration, peace, and so on. So we did not think about development as such, but we also thought about the development of people. In 2009, we started our strategy with the four main goals, and in particular, formal education and non-formal education are extremely important. I work in the field of formal education, and I think this is a very important objective because this has to be part of the institutional education system, because the youth are our future, and so this connection with official education was extremely important. This strategy, this process has been seen as a good practice in Europe. I would like to stress 4 aspects, because it is more than a political document. It is it was an action plan, a 5-year action plan, with the participation of all the different actors, and then it became also an implementing protocol that was signed by all the stakeholders. All stakeholders committed themselves to do something, so it was not just a document. It was something that was alive, and in order to do this, we created a commission that includes the Portuguese Agency for Cooperation, the Ministry of Education, the Portuguese platform of NGOs, as well as a Portuguese representative of the European Network for Development Education. So there are no slides anymore, but anyway, you can follow me anyway, I think. I hope that you understand my Italian. So we're now at the 4th point. We also had a monitoring of this strategy. I participate in this monitoring activity. Obviously, there are the funds to pay a university that carries out this monitoring activity. We have a yearly planning. We have a yearly report. And then we organize seminars, for instance. So there is this monitoring group, and I believe that these 4 points are the reason why our strategy is seen as a good practice. But the story is not over. From 2010 to 2016, this strategy was actually implemented. But to reach or to include also formal education, a protocol was signed by the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs and the Ministry for Education. This protocol aimed at promoting lifelong learning for teachers and training for teachers. Well, I'm quicker than the slides, apparently. Anyway.
Tecnologia. Però in 2016
In 2016, we evaluated, we assessed this strategy, and we published the reference document for development education for teachers. So these are mainly guidelines for teachers, published, as I was saying, in 2016. Well, I just carry on. So in 2016, these guidelines were published.
Ok, possiamo andare avanti. E questa linea guida.
So these guidelines focus on 6 themes, and this document helps teachers to understand what we mean by education to global citizenship, because it's not so easy to understand this concept. So we created these guidelines to help teachers to include this theme in their work at school. We also created training courses for university students who will become teachers, as well as for teachers already working in schools. So now I'm going to talk about a project we won in my school. It is called Global Schools, this project, and it is part of the DEAR program of the European Commission. It involved 10 countries. It was created for Provincia Autonoma di Trento. The objective is to introduce EGC in the curricula of formal education in order to tell teachers this is possible. So this is something that is inside the education system. You cannot become a citizen with a 45-minute lesson every week. You can become a world citizen, a European citizen at any given moment in your life. So the most important activity in this project was really this initial training, but also the creation of teaching resources and the promotion of exchange programs between teachers. In Portugal, we take this opportunity to create these guidelines, to make them a living document. So we put together a team of teachers of our universities, teachers of Portuguese, maths, natural science, history and geography and so on. And we had a meeting where we put together the themes of our reference document and the curricula of each discipline. So we created this manual for teachers called the Global Schools in order to show them that you can be a teacher of Portuguese, but at the same time you can tackle global problems. And you can teach maths when you talk about fractions. You don't have to resort to the pizza example that is so common for teachers in schools. You can do that, for instance, talking about the world population. So that's what we wanted to tell teachers, that you can teach your own subject while giving also information on global citizenship. So I'm almost at the end of my presentation. So the first strategy was concluded in 2016, and now we're starting with a new one that was published in December 2018. This year, we have started the implementation of this strategy and the creation of this new monitoring system. My school is involved in this system, this monitoring system, which is in a way an improved system. We have a website, we have a platform to spread results, and we are now creating this new system. Anyway, it's not easy to talk about these subjects in Italy at the moment. At the time, we have a government in Portugal who is very favorable and who is interested in these issues. So last year, there was an educational reform. The slides went backward. You can go on. So as I said, there was a reform in education last year. In Italy, you have regions and provinces. Portugal is smaller, doesn't have all these regions and provinces. We have a national curriculum for schools. Now we are, however, envisaging new curricula which are more flexible, take into account new documents, as for instance the profile of the students and the national strategy for education to citizenship. And now we have a new subject taught in school, which is citizenship and development, taught at all levels for students from 6 to 17 years of age. So whereas in the Global Schools project, we actually invited teachers to come and take courses. Now we have the queue, actually. Teachers really want know how to teach this new subject, so they look for training courses. So we can say this was a success, and we believe that this, well, we have really opened up new opportunities in Portugal. In terms of school subjects, we have, as I was saying, this new strategy. These are the key words of this new strategy. And these are the challenges, because as I said, well, I gave you a beautiful image of the situation, but there are some problems as well. So we do have good policies, but then in practice, there are so many challenges. First of all, we needed to keep these funds for our area, because the agency does have funds, but we are talking about 400,000 euros per year, so that's not much. It helps because Portugal is a small country, but it's not enough. And then we have to move from what we have in terms of documents to something that is practical, because if teachers cannot teach this new subject, we cannot do anything. So it is important that people are involved. We need to take into account political instability and new governments. And you in Italy know what I'm talking about, because with new governments, they might be more or less interested in these issues. And then we have to go against nationalism and populism that is emerging throughout Europe, because good policies are a good start, but if we cannot agree at human level about certain values, then, well, these policies are really worth nothing.
Grazie. La...
Thank you, La Salete. We have talked about education, so schools and universities. Now I'd like to leave the floor to Alessandra Filippi. Alessandra Filippi will talk about how this actually becomes, how that is turned into a local policy at the town of Modena, at the city of Modena. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks to participants. My name is Alessandra Filippi, and I've been recently appointed as Councillor for the Environment and Sustainable Mobility of the city of Modena. I had a year mandate in the previous legislature, and this year we had elections, so we have more years. I mean, I'll be in office for 5 years, and 5 years is probably a long enough time to implement these policies. Mine is a very recent experience. I am, in my curriculum, I don't have an experience of this, but the municipality of Modena has a long tradition. I hope it was me who managed to go to the next slide. So, like I was saying, the city of Modena has a long-lasting tradition when it comes to cooperation and the work that you carry out with your citizens. Unfortunately, the real challenge is that this tradition comes from far away, and it affects a population that is getting older. So today's challenge is to convey this great legacy to young generations. This is not easy at all. To do this, to achieve this goal, we try and use these new tools provided to us by the European Commission, so we try and convey these tools to young generations. The municipality of Modena acknowledges the Italian strategy of education to local citizenship, and the system of values that have been so well illustrated by the previous speakers are the very same concepts that we introduced in the guidelines for our 5-year mandate. In other words, they are part of the political program of our board. We aim at focusing on interculturality, peace, human rights, solidarity, development, and sustainability. So I will tell you a little bit about the presentation because I cannot manage it from here. So the municipality of Modena is part of the DEAR European project that has been previously illustrated with a project called Shaping First Cities. This project aims at strengthening the role of citizen local governments in reaching the 17 objectives of sustainable development of the Agenda 2030. The actions foreseen by this project are first and foremost to carry out a survey. The project involves 10 countries, 8 are European member states and 2 are third countries. And there are a number of actions. They include surveying the public opinion in the areas concerned to check how much the Agenda 2030 is familiar to citizens. Then, the recognition of local action plans for the implementation of the Agenda 2030. Then, an education, training, and awareness-raising program for different targets, not only young people, but also public officials, for example. That is because education to global citizenship is not only targeted to young people. Much still has to be learned by normal citizens and, above all, by local administrators or public officials. Then local stakeholders, the organizations of the civil society, and the citizenship in general. A communication and advocacy campaign to raise the awareness at various levels, thereby explaining this to people. And the slogan is, this is in your hands. And then definition of a local plan of the Agenda 2030 in any partner city. The project is very complex. This is a partnership that is very important. It is coordinated by the Emilia-Romagna region, and it focuses on 4 Sustainable Development Objectives, 4 out of 17. The objectives are Objective 5, which is basically reaching gender equality and empowering all girls and women. Then Objective 11, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, long-lasting, and sustainable. Objective 13, so promoting actions at any level to fight against climate change. And then Objective 16, promoting political and inclusive cities for a sustainable development. And the partners are the ones that you see in the slide. I was talking about the fact that the municipality of Modena already has a long-lasting tradition from this viewpoint. It already has started working programs that can be related to the education to global citizenship, and this is already within the schools as well as outside. The municipality of Modena is part of European networks, and this is a very important occasion, especially for administrators, because this gives us the chance to exchange views with other realities, and this way we can learn what is being experimented and implemented in Europe. We are part of the local Agenda 21. We have MUSE, that is the multi-center for environment and health for education towards sustainability in the suburbs of Modena, dealing also with projects with schools. Then we also joined the network Healthy Cities of the World Health Organization, as well as other European networks like the Climate Alliance, the Covenant of Mayors, and Energy Cities. This there are a number of themes being adopted. They're always the same. And there are 2 projects that I would like to illustrate. They start from far away, but they can be framed also within the shaping first cities. They are education to cooperation and international solidarity, and education to European citizenship. The project of education to solidarity, international solidarity, is called the Modena Chiama Mondo, so Modena calls the world. It involves the primary school pupils from the primary schools and the first 2 classes of the secondary school. Modena Chiama Mondo, that's the project, is a project that was started in 2009, so probably we were forerunners at the time. Not only Modena, maybe also other realities, but we are proud of the fact that we were forerunners. And with this project, we are offering courses for free of education to global citizenship, and this in the Modena schools. In the schools, in the classrooms, we talk about topics of global citizenship, solidarity, and international cooperation, and it proposes tools to understand the global and intercultural current moment around us. The aim is to allow young generations to get to know and critically interpret an increasingly complex reality, and thereby developing positive moments of exchange. This project has been conceived and managed and is managed by a very important office, the Office for European Policies of the City of Modena, because in that office you find specialized personnel to bring these projects forward and also to access the resources, the calls, and the financing that Europe proposes to its various communities. I wanted to cite this project that was also recently cited in a national newspaper, because that is actually one of the most important realities, to find the economic resources to then actually work on these actions and build the necessary corresponding tools. The 3 encounters, 3 meetings in class are organized, 2 hours each, and that's a working method which is very open to dialogue and very stimulating, because our ultimate goal is to stir empathy, and this in a very simple way, in a very attractive, simple way. 20 classes are involved, and then starting from the project we involved about 20 years, and we're still bringing it forward. I'm almost finished. The other project is Education to European Citizenship, learning itineraries, and the title of this is Educating to Europe, and that's referred to the first 2 classes of the secondary school. And these meetings, and the meetings foreseen by the other project, go on throughout the entire school year. The objective of this project is to bring young students closer to the issues of European citizenship and what it means to be a European citizenship. What are the objectives that this can bring about? In the past 5 years, about 452 classes attended the service, 809 teachers, and about 12,000 students. To conclude, I would like to remind you again that we are part of these European networks, Rete Città Sana Italia of the World Health Organization, and we're president of that. Then the Climate Alliance, the Energy Cities, and the Covenant of Mayors. The Covenant of Mayors is paramount because we work on all issues related to climate change and the strategies, policies, and actions that can be implemented accordingly. These are objectives that all go to direction, especially the topic on pursuing the objectives of the Agenda 2030. So together with the Education to Global Citizenship program, these are reasons we are proud of, and we would like to bring them forward also in the future. Thank you very much.
Grazie ad Alessandra Filippi per averci.
Thanks to Alessandra Filippi, who gave us some concrete examples. And now let's move to the more practical part. We ask Ilaria Signoriello to tell us how, in a way, EGC becomes work and social inclusion. I would like to thank you and thank the Rimini meeting for this opportunity. Well, I will be very brief because the time we have is not much, and I will like to leave the floor to my colleague here. But I would like to take you on a trip in the most beautiful part of Italy that in a very silent and hidden way gives voice to those values that underlie EGC and all the sustainable development goals. I say this is a hidden part of Italy because it does rather than talk. Yesterday, jokingly, I said the influence of those who are simple, those who do something but do not have the time to talk about it. And so I would like to talk about some of these experiences, and then together with my colleague, we will talk about the different TGCs and how all this is connected with other issues and the themes. So I work about inclusion through the earth, through agriculture. And so this is a strategic goal. In Italy, there is something that makes us unique in a way, and it is also a point of reference because we managed to develop a concept of rural activities, agriculture, small-scale agriculture that becomes an inclusive space for very fragile categories, young people, people with psychiatric problems, people that are in prison, so all those people that in a way had some difficulties and lived in a situation of exclusion from society. So while in the agricultural work they find a new space of work and love, all these people actually embody the values of EGCs as well as the values of our Italian constitution, where work should be accessible to all and should be also the basis for the creation of cohesive community. And at the center there is the dignity of people. I was lucky enough to be one of the 12 innovators who took part in Cagliari to the Week for Innovation organized by the church. The Pope Francis talked about the people who make this kind of choice. I tell these people, you are actually, what you're doing is a revolution, but these communities take into account different needs to create jobs, but also to create dignity. So agriculture, and we are now in a context of international cooperation, social agriculture then has become an important tool in Italy to guarantee fair agricultural work. And I've been everywhere in Italy, and we have created so many training opportunities, and we have also created so many relationships. We talk about circular economy as a part of a social economy, and this is what is borne by the respect among people. People are at the center with their needs, starting from people who are not very welcome. So, the first time I went into an agricultural enterprise in Grottaferrata, I found a certain situation. I saw an agricultural machine, and there was someone working there. This person didn't have legs. So I asked, do you need a hand? But maybe you need a hand to make you understand where you are, because everyone here does what they can. So that's what he told me. So it's a completely different relationship. This person was actually giving me an added value. In the countryside, when you see immigrants, young immigrants, that help disabled young people in their agricultural work, you realize that you are generating an added value in terms of cultural elements. So this becomes what is written in Article 3 of our Constitution, that is to say, to remove obstacles that make it impossible to have human rights applied. So then the food that comes on our table is a food that can taste of justice. So I would like to say that the law on safety is something that goes in favor of black labor, because it is giving us problems in our relationship to municipalities, and this goes against the needs of our people, of our territory, that wants to produce a high quality products with a great added value in terms of justice in a country that, like Italy, is really a pioneer in a sector that is completely difficult. So EGC is important if it creates jobs for our youth. And since I have worked also in the field of international cooperation, I always wondered, all these young people that we involve when we participate in congresses. Well, I would like to tell them that there is a place where they can apply these values, where their work is not in contrast with the well-being of the community. It creates wealth, but it also creates added value. And I say this in the light of our tradition. We have a very long tradition in terms of social economy in Italy.
Esistono, allora noi ci siamo sempre posti queste realtà.
So she says, I got lost, she says, because I was thinking about voting with your wallet, as we said yesterday. So this is something that exists when within a supermarket you choose one product instead of another, because you know that by buying that product, even if it is 10 cents more expensive than another, behind this product there is a something. So, well, we need to understand this, because these products create cohesive communities. So I would like to tell these young people who follow us that there is a path that can take them to a different life choice and work choice. So you don't have to just go to congresses on Saturdays and Sundays and then go back to work in your working place on Monday, where these values are not respected so well. Otherwise, I cannot use or put into practice these values. So this is what a social economy is, with all its difficult aspects and different aspects. This is a choice that everyone should make, because work, as Pope Francis says, needs to be creative, free and responsible. So I conclude because Pope Francis already showed us the path that we have to follow with the Evangelium Gaudium, so social justice in the working field.
A questo punto chiedo.
And then at this stage, I would like to ask Arianna Valentini to provide her personal experience and to talk about how her work with Operazione Colomba has changed her life too, as a young woman. We would like to know from her, how can one combine an ideal, a life, a job? Thank you, Paola. My name is Arianna Valentini, and I am a volunteer of Operazione Colomba, that is the non-violent, peaceful organization of the community Papa Giovanni XXIII from Rimini. Since 1992, Operazione Colomba has been dealing with the victims of conflicts in the world, and for over 25 years, a number of projects have been implemented in a number of areas in the world. At the moment, 4 projects are ongoing, and one is about to be started. As regards myself, I participated in one of these 4 projects in Lebanon. The volunteers of the association live with the Syrian refugees, the refugees of the war in Syria. Lebanon is a very small country. Since 2011, so since the start of the war in Syria, it has welcomed between 1.5 and 2 million Syrian refugees, and Lebanon has a population of 5 million inhabitants. So in that case, we can really talk about overcrowding. Every day we share the lives of these people. We live with them, we coexist with them. We live in a refugee camp, and the refugee camp is one of the most widely present structures, so to say, that are present in Lebanon, where refugees live. After 8 years of war, many people who used to live in peripheral apartments in town were forced to go to town, living sometimes in tents, where they actually earn only something, for example, only very little. And we live here in this context. We share our life with these people. And this is what I have done. This is my experience. We, on a very practical basis, we support, we accompany these people in the Lebanon territory, because Lebanon did not join the 5th Geneva Convention for the Rights of Refugees. And so Syrians are illegal citizens in Lebanon. They don't have a permit to stay there. The permit to stay costs hundreds of dollars, and it has to be renewed every 3 to 6 months. So many of them, after 8 years of war, can no longer afford to buy a permit to stay. If they go out of their dwelling, be it a tent or a garage or a house, they can be arrested because they don't have this document. And there are lots of military checkpoints scattered all over the Lebanon territory, and so they could be arrested there. And we guarantee for their life, for their safety, and accompany them in important moments. For example, if they have to go to hospital, or if they have to go to another town to pick up some documents, or to ask for food aid, for example. This is not the only thing that we do. The most important thing we do is sharing the daily life of these people. I have probably already mentioned this a couple of times. These daily steps, if we make them every day, I mean, they help these people coming back to life, because actually when they flee from, having flown from their land, they have seen their life taken away. A volunteer can do a lot of other things. And I make a proposal to us. For example, I was twice on a project 2 years ago, and then this summer. On both occasions, I was there 2 months. I stayed there 2 months. And after coming back this winter, I started working as a cultural mediator for a Syrian family who was welcomed to Italy by our association, Papa Giovanni XXIII, through human corridors. The human corridors are a legal immigration channel established in 2016 by the Valdese churches and the Sant'Egidio community. Every year, about 1,000 Syrians coming from Lebanon can be welcomed in Italy. These people are welcomed not so much through the normal welcoming centers, like, for example, the SPRAR, first level and second level welcoming centers, but they are rather welcomed by communities, families, associations, and by the civil society. In other words, by people who are sensitive enough and so that they feel responsible for the life of others, especially if these others are in difficulties, if they are in a painful situation because they are exiled from their country. And so these people decide to organize the refugees at their homes. So at the moment I am working for one of these cases. I'm working here in Sant'Arcangelo, near here. And yeah, and that's all. Thank you, Arianna. So we're running out of time, but I would like to have a short round of Q&A. I would like to invite the people who are here to basically pose questions. I have a very short question. Who among you know what this is? Do you know what this is? Actually, do you know what it is? We know it because you explained this yesterday. I'm saying this because this is an answer just for our foreign guest. This is the origin of all evils. Knowledge, being knowledgeable about complexity. All the evils come from here. And that is because you normally prosper. If you want to spread evil things, you prosper if people are not knowledgeable. So it's not enough to work on programs, working on education. I mean, what we have to do, we have to start from kindergartens. You have to have people open their minds at a local level. So educating people to complexity. Laudato Si is based on complexity, and that refers to the thought of Morin. You have to start from here. And then in that, like I said, if I look at my blood tests, well, I have to have a look at my ecological imprinting of that of my country, and I have to measure my skills compared to complexity. That acronym is a very difficult acronym, but that has to become the pillar around which we have to start training with. So congratulations to the enthusiasm of our Portuguese friend, because she's pragmatic, and it is pragmatic people who ultimately get to results. Thank you. Other questions from the floor? I don't know if the speakers want to add something, if they feel like adding anything. Maybe he added a provocation. I don't know if you want to answer him. Well, I would like to say that I agree with you, but I say that besides the ecological imprinting, we also have to have a social imprinting. We have to see how our actions have an impact at the level of the environment and the people around us. We have two great emergencies, inequalities and climate change. So social justice and environmental justice are the two legs of a pathway that has to be developed in parallel. Both have to go in parallel. It is not by chance that we're saying this exactly in a moment when there are 400 companies, including the biggest multinationals in the world, have said to the American authority that profits are not enough because profits create negative externalities. Agricultural business farms can be fantastic, but actually they grow within a community. And if the community does not grow, the farm will not grow. Zamagna said that actually acknowledging this was a great self-blaming action, so to say, because this has provided actually the possibility to give new guidelines. Profits, the GDP, the profit, the GDP is not saying anything. The GDP is not telling anything of the well-being of people. You might have a GDP that is very, very high, but you have a level of inequality that is no longer tolerable. So there are a number of imprintings that have to be analyzed. and they should all become the fundamental parameters to redraft policies and the behaviors of everybody. Exclusion in this respect, and here comes the importance of social economy, is to practice new values. You have lots of people actually talking about values and they don't even know what they mean. Talking about inclusion is different than doing inclusion. If you are supporting people with disabilities, it's different than simply talking about it. So the social economy is a big lab of new values, and values have to be practiced. We are experiential beings. Without the experience, you lose the potential. How can I explain that being together with disabled inside a greenhouse with people coming from a school because there was bullying, they were bullies and they were sent there to have a report of weaker people. I mean, they changed, they substantially changed. But this change was in getting to know these people, in seeing them at work, because sometimes they would help them working. They would help them pick the fruit, for example. So their ability, they are actually being at stake. So environmental imprinting, but also social imprinting. There's lots of suffering, and this suffering has to be turned into something positive.
Allora, aggiungerei questo. Le persone che sono state invitate a questo.
The people who came here as panelists today have relationships among each other. They have professional relationships. They know each other. They work together sometimes. So with groups of people, we are now collecting very concrete proposals in order to try and guide this change. So we are collecting ideas and contributions that can actually give way to a real change. So some are asking for guidelines. So I would like to ask for those who are here, to our speakers, if they have something that can be given as a contribution to actually draw up real policies. To do this as Concord Italia, we are obviously available to act as bridges, so to speak. And there is another thing I would like to say, that the Rimini meeting is a unique event. This is its 40th edition. It is a great opportunity to talk about different situations from so many different points of view. So I heartily ask you to go to the stands with the red hearts, where you can donate to finance this great event of the Rimini meeting. So please, again, donate only at these desks. The Italian writing on them is Dona Ora. And if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you all. Concord Italia is at disposal. We have a seat in Rome, Largo Camesena, together with Chipsy, whose president is here again. So there are people who can answer your questions, or so if you have contributions or ideas you want to share, please feel welcome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your stay.